myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Monday night, it's the transfer show with Borough Mag. Joe, how are you, mate?
Evening, all right.
Yep, just me and you tonight, mate. I thought it was about time me and you just chewed the fat on a Monday night. There's a lot to take in and a lot to talk about, and we'll start, I guess, with Botman, and we might as well put that photograph up that we use virtually every week. It's nearly ready to be chucked in the bin and nearly ready for the actual original photo to come out of him wearing the strip. But yeah, Botman on Tyneside for his medical, flew in a private jet today, mate, and that's again, 22-year-old centre-half, good, solid player, sought after by AC Milan. They've been priced out of the deal. Newcastle have swooped. He's happy coming. We're happy having him. It's a job well done. Let's hope he passes his medical.
Absolutely, mate. I told you last week not to delete that photo, didn't I? One more week.
You did.
Being in the know and all that, you know what I mean? Steve, what a signing. What a fantastic signing. And you know what? Patience and persistence, and it's paid off. Clearly, it's a player that we've been after for a while, and if you're led to believe, apparently we were after him under the old regime. So somebody somewhere at that football club thinks a hell of a lot of this lad, and to think that we're now signing, 21-year-old. Dare I say, relatively unproven, centre-backs. He's had a great season last season, of course, but yet to break into the international scene. And we've just spent 35 million on him. So I'm absolutely delighted. I've been saying on this show since we've been doing it, really, this is the kiddie for me. And I really, really hope it's a real statement of intent, Steve. And hopefully it's not another false dawn centre-half. We've had our fair share of absolute dross centre-backs over the years, if you think back to some classics such as Marcelino. But I don't get the sense that this lad's anything other than quality. We're running proper businesses now, and proper businesses don't spend £40 million on a gamble. He put that thing on Instagram today. I don't know if you've seen it, the aeroplane, let's go. And you just really, really start to get exciting. And I tell you what, looking at the work that Howe's done on the defence, he was all us thinking, when are we signing Mbappe? When are we signing Neymar? When are we signing Diaby and spending 500 million on the strike force? Hey, we've gone out and done it properly. We've started from the back. We've made some fantastic signings. And apparently for less than Manchester United paid for that donkey Maguire. That'll do for me.
Yeah, one person I was speaking to today, John, a good pal of mine, he cast a little bit of a doubt over this transfer and said, well, on the both left-sided defenders, i.e. Dan Burn and Botman, and he posed the question to me, do you think they're looking at bringing in maybe another centre-half? I think we both ended up agreeing at the end of the conversation that I think Eddie Howe will probably play a three at the back, and I still think Fabian Shaw has a lot to contribute to Newcastle United. And I think with the full-backs situation that we have, I think there's variation there. We can play two centre-halves, we can play three at the back and wing-backs. I think there'll be a bit of a variation. I think what we've got to remember is that Eddie Howe came in, he was stuck with the players that we had, he was stuck with the players that Steve Bruce was given, and he had to make the best of a bad job, and he couldn't change anything until January, which is a notorious bad window. And he made a silk purse from a sow's ear, really, in January with some of those signings. It was absolutely brilliant, and ultimately led to us staying up and quite comprehensively, pulling off one of the greatest escapes that we've ever seen since Steve McQueen in those infamous films. So for me, personally, I was delighted to see, the Botman had, moved to Newcastle, and I think another centre half is possible. But I think they could also just rely on Shaw. I think we will see players go out, but yeah, it's just that whole left-sided conundrum I think my mate was trying to suggest, which I don't tend to think too deeply about those things, but he clearly had.
Interesting, Steve. It's really interesting. I think as we've been, as we've been doing this show, one of the things that we talk about is not only who are we bringing in, but where are they going to play and how are we going to play. there's a massive part of me that thinks, yes, we favour left-sided centre-halves, right-sided centre-halves. I'd like to think that a £35 million kid with the world at his feet could kick a ball with his right foot as well. But you're talking about competition as well. You're talking about the squad. You're talking about having options. With the greatest of respect, God bless him, we're not talking about having to rely on Kieran Clark, for example, with respect to him, Steve. So look what we've done with the goalkeepers. Look what we did with the left back. We signed Target a couple of weeks after Dummett put his name to a contract. All of a sudden, there's competition for places. And I mean real competition for places. And I don't think Newcastle United have had that for a long, long time, Steve. Listen, Dan Burn has been an absolute step up from what we had. Fabian Schär under Eddie Howe has all of a sudden looked like a majestic Rolls-Royce centre-half, the player that we wished he always was. And what do? You go and spend 35 million and make it even better as well. So yeah, why not? We still don't know about the outgoing, Steve. And if we woke up tomorrow and Clark's gone and Lascelles has gone and arguably Fernandez has gone, does he bring somebody else in? Yeah, maybe he does. But to think that it's Dan Burn, an on-form fit Fabian Schär and now Sven Botman vying for 2 or 3 places, that'll do me all day long.
That question there from Blue Rhythm Boy. Anyone else worried that we weren't Botman's first choice? Great signing if his head's right, though. I mean, we're literally, we're relying on the press's reporting of this. And, to say that we weren't his first choice, do we really know that, Blue Rhythm Boy, is my question back to you. He hasn't come out and said that. And I think this comes down to what we've been discussing on the Amigos. The bottom line is that agents play their part. We've seen it with the Hugo Ekitike deal. If we're led to believe that deal is off, then it could have a lot to do with the agent. But getting back to Botman, no, I'm not worried because I don't believe that we weren't his first choice. And I think he had a simple choice, Milan or Newcastle, and he was happy to go to both. And I think if Milan had offered a better deal, the boy would have probably said, well, you know what? I'm going to go to Milan. They're a great club. They've got a great history. They've offered us more money. That's where I'm going to go. But Newcastle are the winners. And for us, he's decided to come to us. It's difficult. If Botman had been ball and Wall's End, then it would have been an easier choice to make. You know what I mean? But the kid's a young lad. He's a young, experienced defender, though. Now he's come through the ranks, and he's I'm just glad he's going to be wearing black and white.
I think you're right, Steve. I mean, is anybody's first choice ever in modern football? You're talking about astronomical sums of money. You're talking about astronomical agents' fees, and fundamentally, this come down to one thing: who wanted him the most? Who was willing to put the cash up? And that's what Newcastle United have done. I'm sure that we wouldn't have had to sell it. I'm sure we see Match of the Day at the back end of last season. And if you listen to Amanda Staveley, one of the most telling things was, I think she made a couple of comments in January, certainly one in February, that said there were players lined up to come to Newcastle. One of them was Sven Botman. So these conversations haven't just been had over the last 2 or 3 weeks that we've been doing this show, willing him to sign. This lad's been on the book somewhere for, arguably for 12 months plus, Steve. So, listen, if Amanda Staveley says that he wanted to come and now he's signed, that's good enough for me. I'll take that all day long. It's going to be really interesting to see, what he says. I'm hoping and praying that we're going to see him in a black and white shirt before 7 o'clock. Let's give the lad a chance. I'll certainly be screaming him on. And if he scores a diving header to win the FA Cup in the 96th minute, hey, I don't care if he wanted to go to Milan or Sunderland. I'm not bothered. He plays for Newcastle now, so that'll do for me.
Yeah, exactly. And it's another reason to be excited. The transfer window is it's in its infancy, really. And Newcastle doing their business nice and early, which is all we really wanted. It's nice to see a few faces through the door. And it's like we said on the show before, just be patient, enjoy it. We will be bringing these players in and more to come, I'm sure. It's just great. And I think Eddie Howe has probably had a lot to say. He probably wants those players in, just in time for pre-season training starting at the end of this week. So let's see how things pan out over the next couple of weeks and the next month. It's going to be interesting to see. Okay, let's move on to one of the comments that someone's put. And somebody's talking about Rafinha. Yeah, Sutty. There's been a lot of talk of us speaking to Rafinha from Leeds. Personally, I prefer him than Diaby because he knows the Premier League. ASM and Rafinha on either wing will cause mayhem with Wilson. I find it a bit strange, really, because Leeds stayed up, and I expected them to keep a hold of players such as Phillips and Rafinha. But obviously, Man City swooped with a £40 million deal, and they've lost one of their key players, and now looks as if Rafinha is going to go. Clearly, things not right at Leeds. Is that a player that Newcastle should maybe be interested in, or swoop for, or is Diaby the better option, Joe? Which one would you prefer to see in black and white?
There's two bits, isn't there? There's two bits, Steve. You've got the first point you make about Leeds United. So I'm led to believe that there's money there, or there's consortiums thinking about ploughing money into that club. Clearly, they've got strong American backing. And they've stayed up. Now, anybody else invariably would build and build and build. It'd be really interesting if they end up selling three of the best players. I notice we're still linked with Jack Harrison as well, so it doesn't just stop at Phillips and Rafinha. Would I sign him for Newcastle? Yes, I would. I think he's canny. I mate a man who supports Leeds, speaks very, very highly of him. Is he the type of player that gets you on the edge of your seat? Yes. I've just noticed a comment about ASM there. Fantastic, to think that you'd have one on either side. Is he consistent enough? Is he an absolute world beater? The jury's still out. And if you think about the price tag and the press and the standard and the level that Diaby's playing at, Stephen, if you look at the stats on the guy, I think, given the choice of the two, you would always go for Diaby. However, yes, Rafinha's got Premier League experience. Yes, he can take a tackle. We see him taking many tackles. Very, very evident. We're now looking at that right-hand side of the pitch. So, yeah, I think I'd have the pair of them if I could, being greedy. I think, interestingly, as long as the right-sided player that we don't get is Richarlison from Everton, because if it comes to Rafinha or Richarlison, I think for me, I'd take Rafinha all day long. So I think I said Diaby, Rafinha, and then anybody else. But yeah, I'd sign him.
I mean, look, Richarlison not for me at all. The guy's temperamental. I think he causes. It looks as he's the kind of player who causes an argument in an empty room. But he's been heavily linked with other clubs, Chelsea, Tottenham. Unbelievably chasing Richarlison, and good luck to them. I mean, they're saying he'd be a great replacement for Lukaku. Chelsea, I just don't see that. And also chasing Anthony Gordon as well. I mean, clearly shows as well to me that Everton's got issues still. Players looking to abandon ship at Ellen Road and players looking to abandon ship at Goodison tells me that not everything behind the scenes is as rosy as that would have you think. And those two teams could be back down in the relegation battle. Something which we hopefully won't be involved in at all this season. But Richarlison, I think we're both agreed 100% we would not be interested.
I think the big thing with them is, Steve, as well, is we talked about Everton a lot throughout, kind of leading up to our takeover and thinking about the absolute astronomical sums of money that football club spent. On some reasonable players, on some absolute flops. Big wages equals big transfer fees equal big wages, and of course now they've got a new stadium to find however many 100 million for as well. So yeah, there might be some interesting transfers, and it's quite nice. It's quite nice that it seems to be hopping up a little bit. So we've been linked with more new players this week. But now so is everybody else. You hear about Raheem Sterling potentially moving on. You hear about Lukaku going back to Milan. All of a sudden, business is going to start to happen. And I think invariably transfer windows often go to the last 3 days, leading up to the deadline. This year, I wonder if people are going to want to do some business. And I think it'll just take one key move, somebody somewhere, whether that's Jesus to Arsenal or Sterling to Chelsea or whatever. And then I think the whole lot will kick off and we'll be right in the middle of it scrapping. So we'll see.
That's what we've got to remember as well. Some of these big moves, have to take place sometimes for the smaller moves to go ahead, because
Absolutely.
they want to recoup some of the money that they've spent. So look, lots of business still to be done, I am sure. Paul Sutcliffe says it'll be interesting to see where the club go now after bringing Sven in, with the Ekitike deal near enough dead in the water. Who will they go for up top, and will they go for Diaby to go on the right? Well, we've discussed Diaby, Paul, but the Ekitike thing again. Paper talk, mate. Remember, paper talk. It's something that, we'll constantly go on about. But Ekitike is not, for me, dead in the water. I don't think so. And I think Dan Ashworth, at the end of the day, is somebody who does his business close to his chest, keeps his cards close to his chest, does everything behind closed doors. And I think the frustrating thing for the journalists, not the fans, is that as soon as he's come in, it's a closed shop. We don't hear these little dressing room rumours coming out. Clearly, journalists have still got sources. They're still getting stuff, fed to them, but it doesn't seem to be coming from the club, and things seem to be going ahead, the way it should go ahead at a football club. So Ekitike, for me, I still think we've got a chance of signing him. I think Sven Botman coming through the door sends out the right message to Ekitike. Again, people saying that his agent is the one who potentially is upping the price, or he's upping the wage demands, or he's looking at the options. But again, there's no direct quotes. We don't know that's for certain. And you can type in Newcastle United into Google, type news, and you'll get a whole ream of stories. I did it before we came on the show. And just looked at what the top 10 stories were. And Ekitike was in there. One journalist saying the deal's off. The next journalist saying the deal's still on. Next one, cold in the water. And that's it. You can, and they've got 20 plus options on the bottom. Click on number 2 and you'll get a whole ream of other stories. Some of them are just rehashed stories from other websites. And I mean, me and you, before we started doing this show, Joe, me and you, were backwards and forwards to each other. Roger as well, one of the mods. I asked him, I said, just try and keep an eye on how many players will get linked with before the transfer window opens. And you were sending us them, Roger was sending us them, and I was looking myself as well. And I think before the transfer window opened, we were actually linked with something like 379 players. 379 before the window had opened. So that must have clearly surpassed 600 now. With it, and there's more we're going to talk about tonight. There's another 2 added to the list tonight. But yeah, that's just the way it is, isn't it? Ekitike, getting back to Mr. Sutcliffe's question there. What do you think? Do you agree with me, or do you think, look, yeah, I think it is dead in the water?
I'd love us to sign 379 players, because our squad would be bigger than Middlesbrough's home attendance. Steve, we've said it every week, haven't we? Again, a little bit like Sven Botman. Clearly, Europe thinks the world of this lad. He's highly sought after. Is the agent using Newcastle as a stepping stone? Is Dan Ashworth actually coming in now and saying, "Whoa, hang on a minute, we're not going to be getting our pants pulled down, and I'm not paying over the odds for him"? Or, like you said, is it just all happening in the background, ticking away? The guy's just been at an under-20 or whatever it was, under-21 tournament. He's entitled to a little bit of holiday time. I was actually leading up with the show over the weekend. You're reading reports about that the deal's done, that the personal terms are signed. It'll just be a case of, wait and see. I did get a little bit carried away and thought it'd be nice to see him and Botman together, but I think Botman's a massive signing, in his own right. So let him have the limelight tonight. But yeah, I mean, one paper says it's off, one paper says it's still on. We'll never know. And I think, like we've always said, until we see someone stood in that centre circle behind you with a scarf or with a shirt or with a name and number on the back, we'll believe it then, Steve. I think what's really interesting, though, is if he was, clearly he's a realistic transfer target, and clearly he's someone that we've absolutely been looking at and kind of caught in to come to the club. Where next, I think, is a really interesting question, that if this deal is off, who do we look at then? The interesting bit to all of that was, though, are we saying that Hugo would have been is he the striker signing? Or actually, like we started the show, you're talking about Botman coming into a kind of pool of players. Are we still going to look for that explosive 25, 30 goal a season, wherever they exist now, centre forward. So I think even if you signed Hugo, Steve, you know, and then Lewandowski becomes available, I think you sign him as well, don't you? I can't see Ekitike being the absolute be all and end all number 9 goal grabbing, you know, 40 game a season, 30 goal a season striker. One to watch, one to get us excited. Yeah, absolutely. Better than Dwight Gale, completely. But yeah, I don't know. I'll wait and see. I don't know enough about the lad. I didn't get massively excited, other than wow, there's a player that teams like PSG are looking at, and he's absolutely ripped his league to shreds. And he's young, and he's going to cost more than 5 million, like Hosselu. So yes, naturally we get excited. Will I lose sleep if the deal's off and we move on to somebody else? Probably not.
Yeah, just a quick question there from Paul on the screen, mate. Can you answer it?
I can't even see it.
You can't see it. Hi, Joe. Never bet for a while. Do you still pay tax on a bet for maximum win?
No, Paul.
There you go.
Put your stake on, get your money back.
Bet responsibly, Paul. That's what
absolutely. Take it easy.
That's what we all say. Look, we've got plenty to get through tonight. Lots of questions coming in, lots of people asking, and I agree with you. Steve Middleman says hopefully a 15 to 20 goal scoring forward. Yeah, and I think you're right, Joe. Ekitike comes in. He's a young lad. You'd like to think we brought somebody with a bit more experience and somebody who can bring goals to the Premier League. Ekitike, with his age, yes, he's been prompted as the next, you know, Thierry Henry or Mbappe, but ultimately, you know, he's a young lad. If he's good enough, then he's old enough. But at the same time, he might have to adapt to the game, and it's going to be an interesting. You know, arrival in the Premier League for the lad. You know, is he going to be like Malcolm McDonald and score a hat-trick on his home debut, or is he going to be somebody who, you know, struggles like John Dahl Thomason or, you know, Hosselu, as you said? You know what I mean? Somebody who, you know, doesn't quite fit in. It's going to be interesting. Dan says we need a 15-goal centre forward first. We do. Somebody who can hit the ground running, like, you know, Loic Remy. Would be a great example of somebody who can just come in and go boom, you know. Andy Forsyth, Newcastle have reportedly stepped up the chase to sign Yannick Carrasco with the Moussa Diaby deal still in the cards. Do you guys think ASM is out of the door if this happens? Ben Jacobs, mate, last night was telling everybody that Chelsea are interested in ASM, and, you know, there is that potential. Timo Werner the other way, somebody suggested.
I pulled a face on two fronts there. Listen, is Alan Saint-Maximin a Chelsea player? Is my first question. Could you see him in that blue? I don't know, Steve. I'd be surprised. I don't know what would warrant this guy, you know, commanding a £50 million transfer move to an English Champions League side. I don't get it, and I know I divide opinion, and I have a very strong opinion about Saint-Maximin. I can't see. I cannot see him playing in that blue of Chelsea. It just, I don't know. I don't think it. You know, Tuchel's like it's like a well-oiled machine. You've got to put a shift in, and you've got to be at it, and you've got to be disciplined and well drilled. Probably everything that footballer isn't. And if it meant Werner come this way, I'd leave it as it is. I think. I think this is the last chance for Saint-Maximin. I think this is the last season. Now, what's this? Season 3 or 4. And yes, if we've got explosive strikers, he doesn't have to worry about the defence now, because Matty Targett's behind him and Joe Linton will nip in and kind of cover. And he looks up and he's got Diaby and Mbappe and Lewandowski in front of him. You might just see that this is the season that he proves his worth, Steve. And, you know, as much as I don't particularly rate the guy, I hope he has an absolute blinder, and I hope he comes and laughs in my face, because that would be tremendous. You know, I really do want him to succeed. But yeah, would I swap him for Timo Werner? Nah, absolutely not. No, not at all.
No, I mean, look, the ASM story won't go away. It's one that will be constantly mentioned time and time again on this show until the transfer window closes. There could always be a late challenge for him, and it just depends on whether the teams get their first choice players. I mean, you know, there'll be some surprises. I never thought I'd see Gabriel Jesus go to Arsenal. And that deal's just about done today. So, you know, for him to go there, you know, anything can happen in football. ASM certainly pulled his finger out those last couple of games. Certainly looked as if he'd been howled as opposed to bruised, and certainly looked as if he got into that way of thing, the way of and the style of Eddie Howe's teams, and less gesticulating on the ground and arms in the air, and ultimately pulling his weight, doing his defending, and getting on with things. And for me, I genuinely love him to stay and to give 100%, because he's a talismanic player and somebody who's creative, and he gets fans out of their seats. I understand that, but he's got to do that game after game after game. He's got to find that consistency, Joe.
And there's an additional point for me that all of a sudden, let's be honest, he was the kiddie. He was the absolute kiddie in that team. Next thing you know, you move Joe Linton, back 30 yards down the pitch, and all of a sudden you've got the best midfielder on the planet. I'm not being dramatic, he is. You've all of a sudden got a little guy called Guimaraes come in that we all just absolutely fell in love with instantly. You're now signing Sven Botman and whoever else, so it makes me wonder about the wages and the wage structure. So all of a sudden, Steve, you've gone from being the kiddie and the top dog in that dressing room to suddenly looking round. You're not the first chant from the Gallagher end. You're not the one earning the biggest wages, and you're not the one that Sky Sports cameras are following round all of a sudden. So again, what's he going to do? Are the toys going to come out the pram, or is he going to absolutely smash the Premier League to bits? I really, really hope it's the second one. I just constantly question the temperament, so it'll be the first one.
Yeah, Keith Downey now reporting £35 million defender Sven Botman's completed his Newcastle United medical and is now about to put pen to paper on his Newcastle contract. Eddie Howe on the brink of landing one of his primary targets since he took over at St James's Park. So they're breaking news from Keith Downey, which is great. Photos, of course, to follow, which is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, good stuff. Good news. Do you think that the upcoming Joshua Usyk fight in Saudi and the mega money around LIV golf has turned footballers' heads to the tune and PIF? And great question, possibly one for the amigos, but me and Joe will give a shortened answer to that, because obviously this is about transfers. Again, I think there's a warming to the whole Saudi thing. I think there'll always be critics. Far left, those influenced heavily by the far left and with far left politics, will always be against it. They won't like it. They won't want Newcastle United, and they'll hate Newcastle United for it. Even some of our own supporters who are that way inclined don't like the fact that they are owned. And look, that's their choice. I am not politically motivated. I'm a Newcastle United supporter, and my only hope is to see my team do well, progress up the league, and eventually win something. That's what I want. I don't think about the politics of it. And as I've pointed out many, many times, and I got sick of saying it. We are not completely innocent ourselves as a country, and that's where the Commonwealth came from. And you're seeing the reaction of the Queen and various members of the royal family visiting places, and we're still control those places. They're in the Commonwealth, and people don't like it. So we were doing the same hundreds of years ago. So it is time to move on. But yeah, I think there will be a warming. I think, and I've said this before on the show, Kieran Trippier will be doing a hell of a lot of. I bet his mobile phone is non-stop. Probably like Eddie Howe's. Speaking to people saying, "Yeah, get yourself to St James's Park. It's great here, man. The crack's brilliant in the dressing room, etc." I think that's the way it is, Joe, isn't it?
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, you're asking a daft lad from Middlesbrough to talk politics, right? Here we go. No, I won't. I'll get us took off air. Interestingly, Steve, when I saw that there, I was thinking Joshua and Usyk. That'd be a decent centre-half partnership. Steve, you've just hit the nail on the head, and we've said it time and time again. Sports washing, or a country trying to kind of bring itself online with the rest of the world and kind of raise its profile and dare I say modernise itself. So what? I'm not going to sit here like you've just said and denounce every country in the world for their dodgy pasts, because as you've just said, none more so than bloody Britain, I'm afraid. Does it stop us living our everyday lives? Does it stop me watching kind of the FA Cup final and getting nostalgic when the national anthem's played? Absolutely not, Steve. I'm a football fan and a boxing fan, and if Usyk wants to take his head off his shoulders again in Saudi Arabia, fantastic. I'll be watching it. good luck to the Saudis, Steve. Good luck to them. And if any of this, from a Newcastle United perspective, if any of this raises the profile of our football club, if it's starting to get people, I've noticed that nice snazzy white and green shirt that we're about to bring out. And that buys us, goes towards Botman's wages or whatever, Steve, then so be it. But listen, this is and always was about football. It's about PIF and it's not about Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, Usyk in the fourth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. Gav McElroy surprised at Bale going to the MLS. I'm not, mate. He just loves golf. That's Bale would have been a great novelty signing. He would have been able to perform in the Premier League. He probably would have got with 10 goals. If Trippier wasn't on free kicks, he would have been good to watch on free kicks. Would have sold a hell of a lot of shirts. Would have been the talk of the Premier League. But for me, Bale loves his golf, loves the easy life. He's done everything he needs to in football. He's got the World Cup with Wales to look forward to, and he can retire a happy man. So good luck to him. Let's see who is going to come instead of him to Newcastle. Okay, big shout out to the sponsor, Spider Miner. Worldwide coverage from the lads, the only cryptocurrency miner that can mine 5 different cryptocurrencies at the same time whilst using virtually no energy, and it's VPN protected. Buy yours now at www.miner.spidervpn.org. Thanks to Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors 0191 389 7245. And a garden hearing dispensary, CBD, hemp and cannabinoid specialists, www.thegohd.com. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables and walls in Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. And thanks to ClearKai, meet the new game over screen, drop into a Clearrun device near you. Available on Apple Store, Google Play and clearrun.game. Thanks to Neil at Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe, hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner. You can subscribe for free. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video. It's very important. Click share to share your social media and drop into the comments to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to post a question to me and Joe. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean and the rest. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show. If you want to join and help the show, you can click join underneath the video and just make a small donation, become a member, or you can pay slightly more, a one-off fee to NUFCmatters.com, join membership, and you can get a cup, a scarf, a pen, and a membership card, and entry into the monthly draw. You can also do that via a QR code using your smartphone. Just put your camera over the QR code and it'll take you straight to the website. And we also give away car stickers to those of you who subscribe. They are free. Just email John at NUFCmatters.com to get one. And NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk is where you can make a donation to the food bank at any time. It's very important you do that during the close season because ultimately, no collections outside the ground, etc., they still need our help. Don't forget the Alan Shearer Ball. There are some tickets left for this, 99 tickets, enter now at NUFCmatters.com. Signed Alan Shearer balls, 260 dinner balls from the 7th of April. And you just need to spend $2.99 to go in the raffle, and we will be drawing that in about 3 weeks' time. Get yourself on to the website to look at that. Okay, let's look at Victor Osimhen, and this is another player that we've been linked with, and ultimately, this one again started as a bit of a rumor, but has built up a little bit of momentum. I just think that's out of our league at this moment in time. I don't think he's going to come to Newcastle, because of the fact we don't offer European football. I think Newcastle are potentially being used as a bit of a pawn in a game there. And I've got to be honest, I agree with what Ben Jacobs said yesterday.
Yeah, cracking player, Steve. Absolutely wonderful striker. And I guess, if this is the caliber of people that we're looking at and linked with, then yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, though, that if I was to say to you, right, I'm going to do my own podcast now, when we might get a million subscribers, but you'll have to wait 12 months. Would you come? And I guess that's the bit, isn't it? Somebody somewhere at that football club's got extreme persuasive powers. If you think about how on earth did we manage to convince the lads that we brought in January, particularly Gumares, come, we promise you're not getting relegated. You absolutely will not go down. somebody somewhere sold that, Steve. So somebody sold something to Sven Botman. Don't forget, he potentially, regardless of what the monies are, could have said, I want to go to AC Milan, you know, and if Lille were willing to accept 5-10 million less, that's where he'd have gone. So I don't know. I'm probably getting carried away now, but yeah, would you be willing to wait 12 months? You know, it's a long shot. The thought of us, you know, hitting the Champions League spaces this season is going to be absolutely, you know, dreamland stuff. But I'm sure Blackburn Rovers thought that. I'm sure Leicester City definitely thought that. There are teams that with a decent run, Steve, and we've proved under Eddie Howe that we can go on a decent run. I won't say Champions League, but is the Europa Cup or the Europa Conference or whatever the hell it's called now, the Fairs Cup, as my dad calls it. You know, is that a realistic target for Newcastle? And if that's the case, would you be willing to come and say, hey, your job, my friend, is to fire us into sixth or seventh place? I'll give you another 6 million if you do it. And then next season, we'll think about the Champions League. So it's an interesting one, Steve. But I think the other thing for this season as well is, don't forget, it's a World Cup year. So I think that anybody is going to want to be playing in the top competitions for the top sides with the top players to almost guarantee or cement their places for their World Cup spots if they're going. So yeah, he would definitely be one that would be really, really nice, and that would be an absolute wow sign. And I don't think he's going to come to us, Steve, to be honest.
Yeah, Davey says, I'm left wing and I love what's happening at the Toon. Davey, I've got to be honest, I've got plenty of mates who are left wing. You know, from my perspective, I just genuinely feel it's the far left who really, you know, hammered the takeover. And not all of them either, but there's been a lot of far left. And I've had a lot of criticism, hatred, you know, cyber bullying, whatever you want to call it, from those kind of people over that, especially over the period of the takeover going, you know, up, on and off, on and off, on and off. And then when it went through, you know, they really had a go. But Davey, listen, football and politics for me, you know, yeah, it's had to go hand in hand with this takeover because it was involved at that high level. But you know, it's one of them things, mate. You know, we all should be living together in harmony. We can all disagree on stuff, but you know, we're Newcastle United fans, Davey. That's the most important thing, 100%. Okay, I did save a few questions from earlier on and a few points. I just want to go back to that. Football Style, good evening. So, Steve, I've got a question. How much can we spend after the Botman deal? I don't know, is the honest answer, because Mike Ashley, of course, didn't spend a great deal of money, Football Style. So we'd have to check. But look, I think the easiest way for me to answer that is that Newcastle United will probably spend in the region of 100 million in the next two windows, this window and the January window. That's, you know, my understanding when Newcastle's new owners came in was that the first three transfer windows they would spend in the region of 100 million pounds. Now, they could also get new money in from deals that they do, commercial deals, etc. You know, it will be a lot different. It will be a lot different than it was under Ashley, put it that way. But your answer to your question, I don't actually know. You know, and I don't think anybody in the chat will be able to give you an exact figure. Gav, where's Holly these days? Is she having time out? Yes, she is. She will be back, but she is having some time out. A few other people having time out as well. Liam Kennedy is going to be coming back in the pre-season as well. He's had a bit of time out. As I said, nobody gets an opportunity when they're doing these shows to have a bit of time off, and sometimes that's what we have to do. We mix it around. Pete and Chris, of course, having a bit of time off from their Monday night show, and Joe and I will be coming and doing some new stuff as well in the season. He's got his hand up. I wonder what he's going to say here.
Is there an option having some time out?
No, Joe, not for you. Not for you. GKR says, when can we buy the white shirt with the green trim officially? We don't know, mate. It usually comes out. If it's a third strip, it's the last one to come out. So I would imagine it will be before the start of the new season. Tom, this is an interesting one. He says, I think we will keep Lascelles. Yeah, let's talk Lascelles. Because ultimately, with bringing Botman in, we would imagine Clark is on his way. Fernandez will be on his way. Do we keep Lascelles? Do we get rid of Lascelles?
I guess ultimately then, how many centre-half do you want at your club? We talked about if Emil Kraft's going to stay around, he has the ability to come inside. We all know Paul Dummett. Arguably, some people would say that Dummett was a better centre half than he was at left back. So there are options around, Steve. I guess for me, thinking it from a purely business perspective, I guess it would depend who wants to offer what for him, wouldn't it? So yeah, we can assume that Fede Fernandez is going to go. We've said many times, Clark's all but gone out the door. Is there anybody lurking around in the academy potentially? Would they be good enough to step up into the Premier League? Time would tell. But I think for me, if someone was willing to kind of offer, I'm just going to say it, whatever the offer for Jamal Lascelles in my eyes will be over the odds. But if someone was to offer, I don't know, Steve, what, 10 million for him? I don't know, 12 million. Would you take it? I think they'd have to seriously look at it. Because I think with the calibre, we all saw the impact of what happened when that guy was taken out of the side. All of a sudden, the goalkeeper looked more confident. The fullbacks calmed down a little bit, and we looked much, much stronger with Dan Burn and with Fabian Schär at the back. The anxiety seemed to lift from the back four. Listen, big, strong lad, tremendous in the air. Couldn't kick a fat ass. He's terrible with the ball at his feet, but I don't know. Would it make any difference if he was there or not with the direction that we're going in? Probably not, Steve. So, yeah, if someone wants to give me double figures, I'd sell him. Yeah,
I genuinely would sell Lascelles. I do believe as well that, Trippier will be captain. But, Dan, lots of positivity and love coming in for you. I am enjoying hearing Joe's take on things, says Don. Colin says you've come on leaps and bounds, Joe, since you did the pre-recorded shows.
That's I've been going to the Steve Wraith School of Media and Arts. I want to part in one of your films. I want to play the good looking one in one of your films.
You can play Mitch. Tom says, Joe, we've been linked with Ronaldo. Would you have him back?
No.
No, that's it. Simple answer. And he also says Newcastle have reported at the end of the race to sign 6'5" Strasbourg defender Jairzinho Niazmi. Testing my ability to say names, Tom. I like it. Sutty again says, if you go by what Jacob said yesterday, Chelsea may turn to ASM. This is what you were saying earlier on. Don't get the main targets. He would do a deal with Werner coming the other way, proving it international and Premier League level. Barry says, do you think that if we sign another centre-back, Burn would be backup? Definitely not. Definitely not. Burn's a starter for me, Joe.
Yeah, although going back to your mate's comments around the two left footers, Steve, but yeah, surely it's going to be Trippier, Botman, Burn, and Target. Surely that's your back four.
Yeah, no, I would imagine it would. No news on that yet, John. It's not time sensitive. That's the one thing about Liam's book. He has had a lot going on, in the background. That's why he's had a bit of time out. But the book will come out. I've told him he should bring it out when Newcastle wins something. And if I'd said that last year, you would have been saying, "Well, it'll never come out." But hey, I think it would look lovely with a picture of whoever's captain holding the trophy up. That would be the perfect book cover for it. Paul says, spot on, Joe. ASM would have to put a shift in for Tuchel. It's not going to happen. Ian says, the owners have basically said that there isn't a budget. If it's a good idea, they will go for it. Very, very true. Yes, 610 watching tonight. Thank you so much. We'll never take your support for granted. Thank you, everybody who is tuning in. Rachel says that Joe is still looking like Mark Benton and sounding like him as well. Mark Benton, the actor, of course.
She needs some new lines, that lass.
Aye, she does. Is Elliot Anderson going to be added this year? Look, Elliot Anderson, I got asked this the other day. I genuinely would like to see Elliot Anderson have a chance in the first team squad, in and around it. I think he'll end up out on loan though, Joe. Yeah, I do, Steve. But I tell you what, in terms of, there was a clamour for him to get into the Newcastle side. If you remember when things weren't going so well, he ended up going out on loan, and the job that he did for Bristol was nothing. He got hero status. The guy was fabulous.
it's one thing we haven't done, have we? If we think, when was the last time we saw a really kind of young, raw talent just let leashed? Yes, Matty Longstaff, I suppose. But this lad's a different type of player. This lad's got flair, creativity. Really interesting looking at the likes of Christian Eriksen. I was reading an article about our need to provide more assists into the box and how we're very limited with the chances that we create. And someone like Eriksen would clearly be, an absolute upgrade on anything we've got. But actually, if you believe the hype and you believe what people are saying about Elliot Anderson, why wouldn't you stick him in behind the strikers and let him have a go? Why not? Clearly he's good enough, Steve. But yeah, whether it's another season, possibly in the Championship this year. Let's see what he does in the Championship, and then he can join us in the Champions League next season.
Craigie, I've just watched Sven Botman get out the taxi. God, the size of him. My God. He'll not even have to jump. Honestly, what a monster he is. You think Dan Burns big? Wait to see this lad. Damn me, how he dwarfs the security guy getting out. That's an absolute belt of that. Billy says, Steve, do you think Shay Given will ever be offered his testimonial? Billy, that's a great question. There's a few people who didn't get one. Testimonials, of course, have gone by the by under Mike Ashley because he hated paying homage to the past, didn't he, Joe? But somebody like Shay Given, he was there 10 years. I know Shola Ramiobi wasn't the greatest player at Newcastle, but again, he was a loyal servant. And another one I'll chuck in the mix, Steve Howie, 13 years at Newcastle, never got a testimonial. And you can't blame that on Mike Ashley. So I think it's because things changed. We had Niall Quinn down the road at Sunderland giving his money to charity, followed quite quickly by Big Al. Then Steve Harper, I helped arrange Steve Harper's charity game, which we donated all the money to charity as well. So there's been nothing really since then. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice, wouldn't it, to be able to say to these guys, would like to pay our respects to you. Again, it's not a priority, but it would be nice to offer that opportunity, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and Steve, you're not just talking there about footballers who were just kind of hanging around the place. You're talking about the Mackham Slayer. Yeah, I mean, he was never world class, was he? But I tell you what, he certainly did the business when he was called upon. So Bobby Robson thought the world of him. I know that, if only he could remember the poor lad's name. You talked about Shay Given, arguably our greatest ever goalkeeper. And you talked about Steve Howie, who was there and done a tremendous job throughout those Entertainer and those Keegan years, Steve. So, these aren't just people who kind of floated around and didn't do anything. So do they deserve to be acknowledged by our football club? Absolutely. And here we go back talking about Mr. Ashley, but these were the things that Mike Ashley was getting wrong. It wasn't just about the managers that he chose and the lack of investment. It was actually looking after the people who the likes of you and I would regard as some of our heroes. And that's where he went wrong. So again, quick wins. I'm sure Amanda and the board have sat down and said, right, where's our quick wins here? Let's change 9 back to Shearer's. Let's move the statue inside the ground. Let's give Shay Given a testimonial. It's easy, Steve. It's easy done. And I'm sure we'd all turn out and clap the three of them.
Yeah, Jason Scott says, again, for Tioti's family, as the club never even sent flowers to the funeral. They did do a lot for Pavel Cernacek, though, Jason. Yeah. But again, you're quite right. Some kind of thing for that. But it's where you draw the line as well. There's little things that I'm sure that they will do. Lee Clark's has done. And David wants to know, how does a Smoggy have such passion for Newcastle? Was it family links? How did you become a Newcastle fan, Joe? Through your dad?
I'm just a Glory supporter, Steve. I supported Middlesbrough until Amanda Staveley came. You can blame me, Dad. You can blame me, Dad. So long line of Geordies. My dad he lives and breathes Newcastle United, and I had very little choice. For those who follow me on Twitter or when John Allen from Q-Tech's messing about, you'll see there's a little boy with a little black and white Newcastle strip on. In the 1980, I think it was. That was me. Never had any choice. I've seen some absolute cack. But I was also a teenager, growing up as a teenager in Middlesbrough, getting loads and loads of stick about my football team. Just happened to coincide with the early to mid 90s. so they could take the mick all they wanted. We had the best team in the world, and something that's just in your blood, Steve. You know, no matter where you're from, going to St James's Park with my dad for the first time, listening to the radio on a Saturday, and there's only one club on earth, isn't there? So you don't have to come from Newcastle, I don't think.
Great crack, mate. Great crack. And answers the question. Let's last 10 minutes look at some of these other players. This is a new one. Thomas Suchek from West Ham.
Ooh.
Being linked, obviously the midfield situation is something which I've got to say it's quite strong. We're looking for wingers, but he's not central midfield players. But there's talk of them being available. Newcastle are in the mix, and this man, a lot of people in the chat asking any more on this. Christian Eriksen, again, I said this on the show with Ben Jacobs last night. For me, he really should repay the loyalty to Brentford. He should stay at Brentford, Christian Eriksen. They were the ones who gave him the opportunity, to restart his football career. They took a gamble, it has to be said. And I think he should stay there. I don't think he should be chasing the pound at Manchester United or chasing ambition at Newcastle. As much as I'd love to see him in a black and white shirt, I think he owes Brentford something. And I think it would be bad manners. And I know that doesn't count for much in football, but he should really be thinking about that himself. And I think there's going to be an announcement from Eriksen in due course. What about the lad from West Ham?
Good player, Steve. Interesting, as you've said. It's all been about the kind of back four, and now all of a sudden, the right winger and the centre forward, and then here we are throwing up a central midfield player from, hopefully, and I'm going to say this with a little bit of tongue in cheek, but I'm hoping that West Ham will be our rivals in the Premier League this year. If you're looking at that level, that kind of 10-4 level or 7-4 level, we should be aiming for West Ham. Would they be selling players unless they've got somebody lined up that's going to enhance their setup? I think he's a good player. Would it surprise you? The names kind of come from nowhere, still linked with the likes of Paqueta. The Eriksen rumour doesn't go away. We still haven't heard of any outgoings from the midfield yet. Is it a position that we absolutely need to strengthen if you've got Gumares and Joe Linton and Joe Willock and John Joe Shelby, if they're staying around, Sean Longstaff, new contract? I don't know, Steve. I'd probably spend my money somewhere else. I like him, though, and I like what West Ham have done. And listen, absolute fair play to David Moyes. I think he's done a tremendous job at West Ham. So would they be selling to us? I'm not sure.
No, and Eriksen, a lot of people agree with me. He should stay at Brentford for me.
I'd absolutely love him, Steve. He was fantastic when he played for Tottenham. He was brilliant at Inter Milan. Obviously had his health scare. And as you say, Brentford. And I don't get the sense, unless I'm completely mistaken, he doesn't appear to be one of these footballing mercenaries. If Manchester United say, there's 150 grand a week, come and play for us and sod them. I get the sense that he's quite a loyal guy, although I'd forgive his disloyalness if he signs for Newcastle.
Yeah, I'm going to chuck this one in again. I still think there's a deal to be done for this guy, and I still think it'll be down to wages. There's not been one bite. There's been no interest in him whatsoever from any of the clubs on this 120,000 to 150,000. And again, it could just be paper talk. But if that is what he's looking for, I don't think he's going to get it. And I think if that's what he's going to try and stick out for, or his agent's going to stick out for, I think he'll be a late mover in the transfer window again when all these deals get done. But I think that's still something that Newcastle will be keeping an eye on. And I keep pointing to the fact that he's very, very good friends with Kieran Trippier, best mates. And I still think that's a deal that can be done. And I think that could be the one that could come in alongside Ekitike. Ekitike and him could come in.
If he doesn't sign for West Ham, I'm going to have to run naked down Northumberland Street. I've been saying it forever. I noticed he was linked again. West Ham preliminary talks. I think I read that either today or yesterday. Would I like to see him at Newcastle? Yeah, he is a good player, Steve. But I agree with you. There's an interesting bit, and here we are again. We're not so much talking about footballers. We're talking about bloody agents. So if there's an agent sitting there now with a player saying, "Hey, people are going to start pre-season training soon. The market is starting to move. And with the greatest of respect, if we leave it too late, at what point do you start to think about, hey, I might end up at Southampton here if I'm not careful, with the greatest of respect. I might end up at Wolves if they're willing to pay the 90 grand, because all the other clubs you were trying to get me to, you were quoting 160. So they need to be careful, Steve. I mean, I'm sure these people aren't daft, and there is still plenty of time left. But I guess you're talking about market value and you're talking about worth, and is that lad worth? The ultimate question is, to Newcastle United, is that lad worth £160,000 a week? I don't think so, but we'll see.
Yeah, people mention him, Willock, in the chat. I actually keep forgetting about Willock. I really do. It's just one of those players who just clearly goes out of my mind. But when I think about Willock and what he was like when he first came to the club, and thinking about the players around him, do you know what I mean? He could actually benefit from a lot of these players coming in.
Absolutely, Stephen. And we talk a lot about Eddie Howe, don't we, in the Midas touch and the way that he's transformed Joelinton and various players. The one player that I would really, really like to see him, work his magic on is Joe Willock. He was, 25, 28 million, was he, or something we paid for him? He wasn't cheap. And he absolutely tore that Premier League up under Steve Bruce. Whatever Bruce had said to him, whatever position he had him in, whatever the formation was, he worked an absolute treat. So that's one lad for me that I'm absolutely willing to kind of bring on. If we bring Paqueta in, if we bring someone like that in, I think Willock's stock kind of drops and drops and drops, and he might end up a bit of an Isaac Hayden character in terms of bit parts, and then he'll move on in 2 seasons' time and go out with a whimper. But I think if Eddie Howe can get hold of him and find him somewhere to play in whatever this new formation is going to be, I think he will, Steve. And listen, let's be honest, nobody was expecting Joelinton to kind of do what he did and perform like he performed. So arguably there was a new midfield signing, £20 million midfield signing, just by dropping Joelinton back a little bit. So it'll be interesting this season. A lot of eyes on Sam Maximin, but a lot of eyes on Joe Willock as well.
I just want to say thanks to the Pundies as well. I'm not sure if they're watching, but they got us this lovely T-shirt, and birthday present, but it was my birthday in February, of course, and never had the chance to bring it to the party or whatever. They forgot me present, I think it was. It's the first, and I saw them at the Andy Griffin talking, and thank you so much for the nice presents. But this T-shirt was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. Big Oasis fan, as they know. Last couple of players. I mean, this looks again like as if he's going to move south. Calvert-Lewin doesn't look as if he's going to come to Newcastle. And again, Malcolm McDonald's favourite player. He's gone on, banged on about this since probably the January transfer window closed. Lewandowski, the money for him, I think it's 55, 60 million now that they're talking. And he's going to want Champions League football. But, I can't see Lewandowski or Calvert-Lewin coming to Newcastle at all.
No, I can't, Steve. I think Calvert-Lewin's probably much more likely than Lewandowski, to be fair. You'd just love it, wouldn't you? There's not many of him left. You think of Salez, and you think of obviously, Allen and those type of players that we've had, all those type of centre forwards. That lad's on a different planet, but I think you're right. He'll end up in the Champions League somewhere. And interestingly, as we enter time out, Steve, I think one of the players that again has continued to be linked this week, when you're talking about the ilk of Lewandowski, is Neymar. That name does not go away. Particularly if PSG sign Hugo, then what does that do to Neymar? And, be really interesting that. But yeah, Calvert-Lewin, I think I've always sat on the fence, as you know. Lewandowski, absolutely, but I don't think he'll come. Neymar, Cloud Cuckoo land, but why not?
Last player tonight, Nicola Zaniolo. It's somebody I mentioned 3 weeks ago, the Roma defender. Again, Newcastle heavily linked with him this week. And, I still think there's room for improvement. Maybe, we could bring somebody else in at full back. But yeah, it's one to watch, I guess, and maybe we'll know more about that next week. Case Paul says, great show, lads. Unbelievable day for Newcastle. How are the lads? Lots of positivity. Neymar, no from me, says Dunnell. According to Kieran Maguire, Newcastle could spend 800 million in 3 years and not breach financial fair play. Is that right? really. I'd have to look into that. It's one for the amigos that I think Lingard's wages would be the stumbling block when you think what the average wages are on our current 11 year. Newcastle won't break the wage structure, but if Trippier does his magic and persuades him to come, there could be a deal done there. I still think that's one to watch, 100%. Sterling's off to Chelsea, says Rachel. You know, again, you know, it's another big deal to be done. We will see. I'm back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, with Ross Gregory from the Evening Chronicle. So well worth tuning in tomorrow. We'll have some Botman news by then as well. Obviously, he will be signing tonight, so keep an eye on Sky. Thanks to everybody in the chat. It's you who make the show. We just are simply patrons and have a bit crack, and you take us in the direction. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Joe, thanks to you. Look forward to seeing you again next week, mate. Take care.
See you guys. Thank you.